and listening. If we have been blessed with good hearing, then we hear most everything. As I am writing this paragraph on a summer evening in New York City, I hear sirens from police cars, falling rain hitting my window, voices from the street, cars rolling down the avenue. I hear the screech of brakes, dogs barking, and the beeping sound emitted as a truck goes into reverse. I hear someone whistling. I hear a car door slam shut and then a motor starting. I hear the rumble of my neighbor's air conditioner. And I hear the Romeo and Juliet Symphony by Hector Berlioz on the radio. It cannot be said that I'm listening to this music. It is there and part of my environment, pleasantly so, but I'm not listening to it as one should listen to music. In part, this is because there are other sounds in the air, but the main reason is that my mind is engaged in writing, in the capturing and assembling of words into sentences and paragraphs to express the thoughts that are in my head. My mind is in a verbal and linguistic mode, not a musical one. The spoken and written languages that we use to communicate are marvelous things, and the foundation of our existence just as much as air and water, but they do have their limitations. They can express concepts and things that we commonly agree upon, but they are conditioned by our perceptions and experience. Verbs tend to be words that we find most concurrence on. Sleep, eat, go are concepts that we accept. But even these have a lot of room for interpretation. Instead of sleep, try rest or doze. For eat, substitute gorge or nibble. And in place of go, put depart, leave, move, dash. These are all different meanings. We encounter the same thing with nouns, such that man can signify fellow, guy, gentleman, male, or all of humanity. In writing the above paragraph, I was so engaged with language and words that I did not even hear the Berlioz. I only came to this realization when I stopped writing and suddenly noticed the music again. Adjectives, much more than verbs and nouns, can be highly subjective based on our values, interpretations, and preferences. If I tell you that a tomato is red, that a news event is tragic, or that a piece of music is moving, you will have a general sense of what I mean. But what is red or tragic or moving for you may differ from what these sensations are for me. All of these discussions and speculations are analytical. They are based on our applying experience and knowledge to come to conclusions. We recognize what we already know and believe, and use intuition and instinct to establish connections where we do not immediately see them. This is the work of an active mind. It is also typical of the way much of Western thought is used, not only in the understanding of behavior and ideas, but also the description of how things work. I could explain to you the architecture of a piece of music, the structure, the instruments that are used, the length of the notes, the impact of changes of keys or volume, and so forth, but this would only describe the science and the philosophy, and not open the door to the pleasure and the mystery of a piece of music. You see, understanding does not come only through description and analysis. Real understanding, especially in something abstract such as music, comes in allowing it to suffuse your being or, as I more plainly stated it above, letting it get under your skin. Compare listening to music with tasting a wine. You may know the grape varieties that were used. You can learn whether the wine was aged in glass, steel, or wood, all of which would affect its fragrance and flavor. You can find out when the wine was made, its level of alcohol and acidity. All of these are facts and give you some information, but they do not enable you to enjoy the wine. You must look at it, smell it, taste it, let it spread across your tongue and palate and slide down your throat. Then notice the aftertaste, or its resonance in musical terms. All of these acts are sensory and all connect to pleasure. You may be able to describe the components of a wine, but you can only perceive its essence, which is to say its soul, through getting it, so to speak, under your skin. The same goes for music. This book is about learning and loving music. As you proceed, you will discover more than you ever knew existed about technique, theory, history, and the nuts and bolts that music is made of. But these will come in the act of learning how to let yourself be open to the pleasure and mystery that I alluded to above. In music, the ears are the window into the soul. Learning and loving music, in this case classical music, is not about cracking a code by knowing the technicalities and structures. Rather, it is like gaining fluency in a new language. The more contact and exposure one has, the more at home one becomes, and, most important, the more you feel this language is part of you. The first thing you must accept is that understanding, in the plainest and most literal sense, is not what you are after. And you should discard from your vocabulary the word appreciate, as in music appreciation. Such a polite and tepid term has no place in approaching something so compelling as music. The path to learning and loving music, which is to say connecting to its pleasure and mystery, is to accept that listening is about active absorption, plus passive, almost unnoticeable analysis. This may seem counterintuitive to everything we are taught about how to think and learn, but it is a central concept here. If you and I are engaged in a deep conversation in which I am describing something that is very meaningful and personal to me, you're probably listening very carefully to what I am saying, trying to absorb rather than immediately analyze. In other words, if you are analyzing while I'm talking, you are not hearing everything I'm saying. Yes, you may hear the words as the symbols they are, but are you hearing the inflection in my voice? Whether it's cracking at any point or it might be rich and full? Are you getting the information beyond the words? Think of a person you know who tends to interrupt others. This person is not a good listener. His or her mind processes what it takes in and anticipates what the person speaking might say. This behavior is about impatience, insecurity, arrogance, and a lack of caring. It is about an absence of openness in the sense of being truly receptive to what one is listening to. Remember that listening combines the perception and recognition of the familiar, whether it be words or sounds, with an openness to countless intangibles, many of them unfamiliar. Doing this takes practice, and curiously, once it is achieved, it must become second nature. You cannot actively think if you are actively listening. This applies to most things, music above all. If you awaken to your clock radio in the morning and go about washing, dressing, and eating breakfast, you cannot actively engage in what you are hearing. So you will hear snippets of music interspersed with weather and traffic information and quick news reports. As you commute to work, this process continues. Even if you switch to a music station and hear the New York Philharmonic play the opening bars of Beethoven's symphony, ba-ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba-ba, or Diana Ross and the Supremes singing I Hear a Symphony, you'll more likely hear this music than listen to it. In part, this is because you have surely heard it before, so your mind does not focus on absorbing it, but also because there are so many visual distractions. If you're watching the road as you drive or anticipating your stop on a train or a bus, you are not giving full attention to the music, nor should you. In the course of your day, music might be playing in your office, in an elevator, in the restaurant where you have lunch, and in the market where you buy your food. You can even stream a radio station from your computer while doing your work. If you call an airline or the telephone company, music of a sort will be playing as you endure the interminable wait until someone answers your call. In all of these cases, the situation is not about music, but the music is there. Even if you are really listening to a wonderful song while waiting on the phone and someone answers your call, the interruption disconnects you from the experience of listening. Notice, if you are truly listening rather than waiting impatiently, how your mind must snap from one kind of functioning, that of listening to an abstraction in a concentrated way,